Parent Entrepreneur Power, conversation number 137.
Parent Entrepreneur Power.
Wait, what? Entrepreneur Power!
This is the podcast for parents juggling the tough choices required for success in business while putting family first. Hi, I'm Mary Catherine Johnson, and I share the ups and downs and dirty truths of profits and potty training while chatting with successful parent entrepreneurs from all walks of life. Are you powered up? All right there. Welcome, Power Parents. You know who I am, Mary Catherine Johnson, but I get to introduce you to someone today, Ty Crandall, CEO of Credit Suite. Now, hang on for this because I think we're going to get into some business stuff, some parenting stuff, and we're going to try and give you as much amazing information as we can about Ty's journey and how you might be able to gain some information and some tips and tools and great advice from that. So without further ado, hello there, Ty. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I hope so, because we're excited to have you. So let's start with the place we start everyone. What is your once upon a time story? So how did you get into this whole parenting and entrepreneur gig, if you will? Did the kids come first or the business?
The business came first for me. Growing up, my parents worked really hard. They ended up getting their college degrees when my sister and I were younger. But I just remember that struggle. I remember not having my dad around, especially. You know, he worked in the evenings. He worked on weekends. And it seemed like he was always working. And I remember growing up with that and really being appreciative of what he did for the family. But at the same time, just, how hard that was not having him around and realizing that, when I wanted to be a parent down the road, that I wanted to have my own business, that I wanted to be able to come and go as I pleased and have the ability to be around and spend a lot of time with my kids. So that was very important to me. And another thing I learned is that I wasn't willing to settle down, to get married, to even think about having kids until I was in a career that was making good money and that was enough to support that and to give me that life where I was able to spend a lot of time with them. So those were things that were very important to me from my youth, and I accomplished success and made sure that I did before I actually started a family, which means, of course, I started a family a little later than many do.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? We kind of pendulum swing from, many of us, pendulum swing from our upbringing with the things that we see that we'd like to do differently. Not that it was bad or terrible, but we just like to do it differently. So was your dad just working more than one job? Is that why he wasn't home? Or it was his job more of an evenings and weekends kind of job?
He just worked all the time. He was just a hard worker, and thank goodness. I mean, he taught me, how important hard work is. And I think, as I grew up and as I, grew into my professional career, I learned the importance of working smart versus working hard, and automation. And, at that time, those things weren't as available, but it is interesting because the upbringing really did, the more I think about it, mold me into who I am, because I did see him work so hard. And then, like I said, I grew up to realize that you could actually work smart versus work hard and get a great benefit. If you used automation and outsourcing and delegation to help you get tasks more done. So my dad has had one job, and he changed jobs several times throughout my youth, but he was always a very hard worker. And I mean, he would go in and work, and maybe he'd come home for dinner, maybe he wouldn't, but there was nights he didn't get home till 8 o'clock, and then we were off to bed, and he was working on weekends. So he was just very dedicated to what he did work-wise.
Wow. Okay, so you saw that. You said, before I even think about this whole family journey, marriage, family, whatever that means to you, before I even think about that, I'm going to make sure that I'm secure and make sure I can provide. So tell me, what's the first thing you did?
Well, you mean work-wise?
And business-wise. So you said that came first. So tell me, take me on that journey.
It was a long journey. I think, I came from high school and I went into the military. I never really understood the concept of people trying to figure out in high school what they want to do for the rest of their life and making that commitment. That just didn't seem to work for me. And so I knew that I would really struggle in college without having a set goal, a path I was headed to. So I went in the military. It seemed like it was a good fit. It wasn't normal to do at the time for somebody that could have just went right to college, but it was a great path path for me. I got a lot out of the military. And one of the things I got out of it was just realizing that the hierarchy that existed there just didn't work for me at all. And again, it didn't work for my outlook of what I wanted for the rest of my life, because I didn't want to travel around, the world and the country and move my kids from school to school. And that just wasn't the upbringing I had. I grew up in a small town and I had that stability. So the military was great for me for 4 years. I loved serving my country. I think everybody should have that opportunity to do so. And then I kind of moved on. I moved through a few different sales careers, and then I ended up, owning my own business. One of my sales careers was becoming a mortgage broker, and I did very well with that. And I ended up owning my own mortgage company, and my wife and I actually got together right there when I was just getting started in the mortgage business, and we were together when I first opened my first business as well.
So take me through the timeline of when that was. So, not making you tell us how old you are, but I have no problem sharing that on the show at all. But, take me through time-wise. When is that? Because there are many big milestones in our country and in our economics, and especially in the mortgage industry, that have happened recently. So when did you start that?
I was pretty much there through it all. I mean, the first Iraq War, I was actually in the service. So I was in the late 90s. I graduated high school at 94, and I was in the military until about 98. And then when I got out of the military, I did a few different things. I had a medical career in the military, so I got out and tried to do the same thing on the civilian side, but it's very different. In the military, they train you in a specialty, and they really let you do a lot in that specialty. And in the civilian side, you just don't get that luxury. You're very restricted on what you can do without certain degrees or without specific, well, mostly without the degrees.
Right.
So I ended up just, after about a year that I realized that the medical just wasn't for me, and I moved into sales. And then that was about 98. And then a year later, I just kind of decided that I was still where I got out of the military in Ohio, and that wasn't where I wanted to stay the rest of my life, and I didn't want to go back home either, because I'd always made the commitment that I wouldn't go back home. And so I decided to just on a whim, Florida sounded like a good idea, and I moved to Florida in 99, and then I got into kind of the sales gig here, but I ended up traveling all around the country, which was fantastic. I was in my early 20s, and I got to travel to major cities all the time. And it was really a phenomenal experience, and until it wasn't. And then I just kind of got to that point where, I had enough fun, and I decided I was ready. I was ready to start a family, and I knew that came with being in one place and not being on the road, and finding a stable career. And so I got in the mortgage industry. I'm not exactly sure when, but I think it was probably around 2005. And I was, which obviously wasn't the best time to be in it.
Well, it was on the upside.
It was
until it
great.
Wasn't.
Until it wasn't. It was fantastic because the money was great. I really enjoyed what I did, and I enjoyed selling and closing at a very, very high level, and the responsibilities and stress that came with that. I enjoyed all of it, and I opened my own mortgage company. I really excelled where I was working a couple jobs as a mortgage broker, and opened my own mortgage company. And at that time, things were great. It was easy to run a business if you were in that industry.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stayed in it through the crash. I was in it when everything went down, and it took me down as with it. I mean, I personally guaranteed everything for my business, as a lot of entrepreneurs did, because I didn't know there was a better way, and that's why I do what I do now professionally. But it was a hard time. I mean, my wife and I went from having a lot of success to not being able to do much of anything. I mean, I remember our electric getting shut off and just, crying because I had no means to pay it to get it turned back on. It was just a really tough time. And I think that really showed me the value of my marriage, the fact that she was willing to stick with me, and that we took that ride together. So then I ended up getting out and ended up doing some work in the consumer credit space, because I thought that a lot of people's credit would have problems. So I kind of ventured into that world, and then I discovered what I do now, which is business credit. And I kind of realized that I didn't need to have personally guarantee everything I did on the WorkWise, and that led to me to where I am now, where I've been at for about the last 5 years.
Wow. Okay. So I've got to stop you there and think about this journey, because so many things happen to us because of our experiences, and it really is part of our personal story. And that personal story and that personal journey for almost all of us, so many of us. I don't know how you can start a business without having some stake in what you're doing and understanding and personal experience there. But it sounds like that's exactly what you did. Your personal experience led you to now culminate into at least this part of it. Who knows what's going to happen down the road, but at least this part of it came from that personal experience. Is that right?
Well, I think it all does. In my experience, and I've always said I love to fail because I think your failures teach you the most. Those are the biggest life lessons when you walk away, and those are the things that just are ingrained in you that change your life forever. So there's no question that all those experiences have really led me to find my passion. Just the same as my dad not being around as much when I was younger has led me to really be in a world now where I just spend a lot of time with my kids. Those things are just very important. So I think all those things that happen across the course of in the span of your life really determine your values, determine who you are as a parent, as an entrepreneur, as a person.
Yes. So now, perfect segue. Take me into the kids. How many do you have, and how old are they?
We have two. We have two kids. We have a boy and a girl. Our son's is Cash, and he's 7 years old, and our daughter is Chanel, and she's 5 years old.
Boy, oh boy. So you're starting school now.
Well, they're good. Yeah, Cash is moving up in the school, and Chanel will actually be moving up here as well into kindergarten. So it's a very exciting time. They're a joy to be around, and I don't know. Every year I think has been the best year.
I know.
And I hear from people that eventually that stops, but.
Well, I am not going to burst your bubble at all. I'm just going to tell you, enjoy the journey. That's all I'm going to say.
It's kind of what I'm told. Yes.
Yeah, mine are 17 and 14. Actually, my 17-year-old's going to turn 18 in 2 days. So I'm taking deep breaths, and at night I cry, and yeah, anyway.
I can relate to that, and I just think about that now. My wife will do something or have a bad day, and I'll say, honey, you got to think about it. I mean, you've got 11 more days of this ever, and before he's gone. I mean, next year will be this day. The 4th of August, you'll have one of those next year, and then you'll have 10 more, and then you only have 11. 4ths of August left to spend with them, and it's sad to me. When I think about it, I think, man, I mean, like Cash is gonna be driving in 9 years, and I just really try to appreciate the time I have with them because it does go so quick. I mean, it just flies by.
Yeah, that's the number one thing. It really because and so let me take it and equate that to your business now. So you've been in with Credit Suite. You've started Credit Suite. You said you've been in business credit about 5 years. Did you start Credit Suite 5 years ago?
Yeah, we did. I actually started this company as a division of another company, and then we actually went out on our own in 2015. So we've been about a year and a half as our own corporation. But I started this entire endeavor about 5 years ago, January 2012.
Got it. And I've seen many times in talking to parents who've started amazing businesses that the business and the parenting in the stages that we go through, many times our parenting stages mirror exactly where we are in our business. So if you look at Credit Suite now and say a year and a half ago, where in that stage between, startup and fast growth and steady growth or leveling off and obviously out to exit strategy, we're nowhere near there with your business. But where in that beginning stages from the newborn, I call it because we equate it to parenting, startup, and where Cash and your daughter are right now in their lives, how would you equate your business stages with your parenting stages right now?
I don't think I've ever thought of it that way. That's a deep thought. I really have to take a moment to think about that because I've never really thought about it. I mean, the business is wildly growing. It's growing at a very fast pace, and I guess the kids are as well. But I don't know. I don't know how to even answer that. I know that the more that we accomplish here on the business side, the more I'm able to accomplish on the family side as well. But the more sacrifices you unfortunately have to make as well.
Yeah.
I've had the luxury of working from home for a large part of this. So since my kids were born, I was working at home, and that's recently changed where now I'm in an office. And that's still probably more of a struggle for me than it is for them, just because I miss hearing them constantly be around. Even if they're not in my office, just to know they're here and I can hear them and just run out there and hug them. So I don't know. I mean, we're growing fast, and I think that my kids are as well, but I also think that the fast growth comes with some amount of sacrifice, and that's kind of the tough thing about running a business is making those sacrifices.
Definitely. And I don't mean to put you on the spot there, but that's really, to me, what has been the realization with this show. And I started it more than actually 2.5 years ago now. And I specifically saw that aha moment was I saw that our stages in parenting exactly mirror our stages in business. So let's just nail that down right now. You just recently went into an office and you took that leap to go away from home and conduct your business in an office, and your kids are taking their learning and growing away from home and going to school. So those two things are happening at the same time. You did the same thing in your business that your kids are doing. So you're kind of breaking away almost and separating your personal and your business by taking it into an office. And your kids are separating from you to a certain extent and taking their learning and having other people influence them beyond, unless your wife homeschools or someone in your home homeschools.
No, you're spot on. I mean, I never thought of it that way, but you're right. I mean, as they're getting into their journey of, spending a lot of their time away from the house as well in the school environment, I'm making the exact same step into the office environment. So I know I definitely see the correlation.
It's just crazy how we do that. It's just every single person I've talked to, those things change at the same time. It's just crazy, and it's just we are ready for them, and we make them, we create them, and they're different for each of us. It's amazing to see. So you mentioned sacrifices. Tell me a little bit more about that. What kinds of sacrifices are you talking about?
Well, to me, I mean, just, I've been around since my kids were born, so 7 years and 5 years of just constantly, and that's interesting to me because, I mean, that's the epitome of what I always wanted when I was younger. My mom worked all day during the day, although she was usually home at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, and my dad wasn't around because he worked all the time. So to be able to have the luxury of raising two kids and having mom and dad, because my wife stays home with them, both home with them all the time has been a phenomenal accomplishment as far as we are. But now it's tough. It's tough to not be there with them, to have to walk out that door in the morning instead of spending that little bit of extra time with them, or, my son coming in my office and playing, a video game behind me and letting me work, but just for me to know he's right there with me. That's a big deal. It's still a really big deal for me. And I still have doubts of whether or not that was the right call or not. I think for the business it was, but personal, it's still, to me, I think it still brings back that reality I had when I was younger, where I just didn't have that luxury of having my parents around as much.
Right.
And it still kind of almost instills fear in me that maybe that might happen again in my life. And because when I was in the mortgage business and married, when my wife and I were together, I mean, I was there till 8 o'clock at night. I mean, that's the way it was. And so, I'm still in that phase where the idea of coming into an office still scares me, that I go back to that stage, and then I go back to one of the things I fear, I guess, the most, which is just not being around there with my kids.
Yeah. And I hear that totally. And it's when you say that your son would come in and play video games and he's there with you, it's really what you're thinking of is you're there for him, that he's there, but that your presence is available to him no matter what, because we pendulum swing from what we felt like we didn't get. We usually pendulum swing and give it 100%. So, I got to tell you, the only thing I would tell you is I hear that. I hear the fear. I know, because that's all you've known in your own life and your dad's life. But, the fact that you see it and know it, there is no way in God's green earth you're going to let that happen. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I know. I do feel confident of that, and I try to make up for the fact that I'm there, and it's easier when they're in school too.
Oh, yeah.
It's a much easier when they're there from I can see them off in the morning and make breakfast, and then they're gone at the same time I'm gone,
Yeah.
and then they come back at 3:30, and then I'm back there at 5.
Right.
So I'm not spending a lot of or 5:15, whatever it may be. So I'm not spending as much time away from them as these long days where I'm not. So
Right,
it's
right. Yeah,
so that'll help.
yeah, it does. And it's really yeah, you're good. You're good. You're good. But the only thing I would say to that, if you do have that flexibility, the thing cuz I've been home with mine since day 1 too. Or no, actually not since day 1. The older one, my husband was home with him. I didn't start my business until he was 4 and my younger one was about 18 months. So and I still worked part-time and had that as a side business. So I wasn't totally home until 2006. And, that was 10 years ago. So they were, almost in school. One of them was in school and the other one was almost ready. But with the flexibility you have, one of the things I noticed with being home with them completely is that the most important time, at least for my boys, I have 2 boys, for the most important time was right when they got home. That was when they were the most communicative. So if something was going on in school and I went to pick them up from school, that's when I heard about it, is right when they got in the car. I mean, I heard about things, sex education, middle school. I'm just going to say those 2 words and leave it at that because I got an earful. My son came to the car and he's not even in the car yet. And he just says to me through the open window, "Mom, what's oral sex?" I'm like, let's get in the car. Let's chat about that when we get home. How's that? I mean, it was just like, what? Wait a minute. What's going on? So right when they came home was the time to find out what was going on in life, in their heads. And so, if you can switch that and go to the office earlier and then be home when they get home, unless, your wife can handle that and would rather be the communicative one. But by the time my husband came home at 5, it was, we'd already processed all that stuff and they were already in their rooms or doing whatever. And they were past it. In 5 o'clock, they were done. They were ready to move on to the next thing. So then Dad tried to bring it up again, and they're like, "What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about."
Well, I kind of like this idea based on this story. I think I like the idea of getting home now at 5 or 6 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. There, we settled that one. So moving on. Oh yeah, I'm telling you, it's a fun ride. Let me tell you, it is so interesting. So anyway, beyond that one, so tell me. So we talked a little bit about your typical day. Then we've kind of hit both ends of it. But do you have, how does your day start? Do you guys kind of get up together and get ready, and then just have breakfast and go out the door, or do you have any kind of a morning routine that you do?
We definitely have a routine, and it definitely does not consist of anybody in the family waking up at the same time I do, or anywhere close. I can think about how much I've done before anybody else gets up. I'm usually up. I'm up in the morning, and I'm out to the gym, and then I get back from the gym and I eat breakfast, and then usually about that time, one or both of the kids is rolling out of bed, and then I'll make them breakfast as well. And then I'm off. I take the dogs out for a walk after I do that, and then I come back, and then usually I'm going up for a shower when my wife is making it out of bed, and then at that point it's kind of handoff. She kind of takes over from there, and then I'm usually out the door to the office.
Well, that's fantastic. So then you go to the office and do your thing, come home at 5, and then you guys have family time, or do you do any work in the evenings too?
Well, I work in the evenings when they're in bed, so it would be nice if owning a business was 9 to 5, but unfortunately that's not the way that it is. So when I'm in the gym and running and things like that, I'm still able to get a lot of things done, and then I'll spend time with my kids. I mean, that's it. When I come home, I'm usually spending about 4 hours with them in the evening until they're going to bed about 9 or so. And we do any number of different things, but it just always consists of me playing with them however they want to play, whether it be tag or Barbies or whatever it may be. And then they're usually off, and I'm part of that routine of putting them down for bed. And then they go to bed, and I spend about an hour with my wife, with us just kind of hanging out. And then she's off to bed, and then I usually spend an hour or two working or planning for work or those type of things before I'm off to bed, and then start it all over again the next day.
Yeah, sounds like your wife gets more sleep than you do.
Well, and they should. I mean, if you look, the amount of sleep that women need versus men, or kids need versus adults, I think everybody gets the appropriate amount.
Yeah.
But there's no question. She's a sleeper. I'm an active person. I need more time in my day to get more done. And I found that I'm okay between the 6 and 7 hours, but it starts to get rough beyond that for long stretches, which is unfortunate because I'd love to be able to sleep comfortably with 4 hours and be good on that so I can get more things done. But that's not the way life works.
If only I could be Einstein. Yeah. Yeah, I did that in my younger years as well. Six to seven was fine. But now, boy, if I go much longer than 2 days with only 6 hours of sleep, I'm in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
tough. I wish I could, but I couldn't. But yeah, my wife does. She was always, enjoyed getting that extra sleep, and we have a place now where she does. She goes to bed early and she sleeps a little bit later, so she gets her sleep, and then I try to manage the kids in that time when I can, and it works out well.
Fantastic. So, all right, now let's get into Credit Suite. Okay, tell me a little bit about that business. You mentioned being more of the business credit rather than the consumer credit. What exactly do you do, and how did that morph from what you were doing before?
Well, just as you have a credit profile and score that's linked to your social security number, every business has a credit profile and score that's linked to the business EIN number. And although most entrepreneurs don't know this, it absolutely exists. So what we do is we help entrepreneurs build that credit profile and score for their EIN. And then in doing so, the company itself is able to obtain the credit, and often even obtain financing. And in a lot of cases, especially with the credit, without the owner taking on a personally guarantee. So the owner's not personally liable for what takes place in the business. That liability is separate, and it helps keep the business owner's personal financials and assets and credit safe and separate from what's taking place in the business.
So that's only if you are incorporated or an LLC or a limited partnership or something like that. But if you are self-employed and everything's tied to your social security number, how does that work?
Well, the first step of owning a business, legitimately owning a business, is you've got to have an EIN number. Even if you're a 1099, you have to work for somebody. Somebody has to pay you as a 1099 even. So, for example, a long time I was a 1099, but I still had a business an EIN that paid me as a 1099, whether it's an employee or a 1099 or not. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first step of building business credit is you have to have a business, whether it be a partnership, a sole proprietorship, an LLC, a corporation. It doesn't matter what entity you choose, but when you set up any kind of business, you first find the name, establish the name in your state, and set up the entity. And the second step you take then is to file for an EIN number. And once you have that EIN number, you can start obtaining credit for that EIN. But until that happens, you still have to use your social security number.
Got it. Yes. Because I know, I mean, even my father-in-law, who's been in business, he's a tax accountant, and he's been in business since 1960. He's self-employed, and it's all tied to his social security number still. So, getting that credit, however, he also has done lines of credit and all those kinds of things. Getting that credit established early, what would you suggest for the listeners if they're just starting their business? What would you suggest they do?
Well, I think even in that example, and I'm not sure, but I would imagine he probably has some kind of entity, even if he still pays himself as a 1099, as a lot of companies do. But no matter what, whether somebody's been open since the 60s or even just opened, the important thing to note is that any company can obtain credit for the EIN number the minute you have that EIN number. And it really just comes down to making sure your business is set up credibly, to making sure that you have a real business location or a virtual office or some sort of actual business address other than a home address, making sure you have a business phone number and it's listed with 411, making sure that you have a legitimate website and an email address and a fax number, just all the basic things that you need to actually have a real business. The way I look at it is that whenever you fill out a credit application, every line item on that application should reflect that you have a credible business, from the address you put to the phone number to the website, all those things. And if those things you're filling out are reflecting you have a credible business, then you just want to go to creditors that will actually report to the business credit reporting agencies, not the consumer reporting agencies, and creditors that will give you credit even if you have none already established. And those are companies like Uline and Quill and Reliable Office Supplies. Monopolize Your Marketplace is one. So these companies will give you credit if you have none, and they report to the business credit reporting agency. So you just apply, get credit, use the credit, pay the bill, and then once that's reported within about 60 days, you'll have your initial business credit profile and score established.
So no different from consumer credit, except that you do it in the business entity, as if the business entity is the one establishing the credit, not you personally.
The process is exactly the same. You go out, you apply for credit, you get the credit, you use the credit, you pay the bill. The credit reports to the reporting agencies. You have a credit profile and score. The biggest difference in the business world is it has to be intentional. In the consumer world, if we walk into Target or Walmart or Lowe's or Home Depot and we get a credit card, we just expect that it reports to the consumer reporting agencies. But in the business world, a lot of entrepreneurs deal with vendors, and most of those vendors don't report. If you apply for a Lowe's business credit card and you put your social security number on the application, then chances are good that that's going to report on your personal credit report. You're going to be personally liable. So you have to be intentional. You have to go into that, know that, and leave your social off the application, where it works really against what we're conditioned to do. And in doing so, then you force them to pull your EIN credit. Then they approve you based on that EIN credit that you have established. And then they report only to the business reporting agencies. And then that's when you completely and truly can separate the two.
Perfect. Yes. I mean, I know we just purchased a car for my 17-year-old since he's going to be going to college and he's going to need to drive himself. So we had to go through the whole personal credit because it was just on our personal. But I also know that we have a business Costco card. So you could, let's say, just Costco or Sam's Club. There's one easy one, not necessarily Target, because a lot of people do buy office supplies or business supplies at some of those big box stores. So there's one, I would assume, would be a good one to have your EIN number on rather than your social security number on if you're going to establish a business account there.
Sure. I mean, in most major retailers are the same. I mean, almost every, gas station chain that's out there, from BP to Chevron to Sunoco, they all have the gas cards. As you mentioned, Sam's Club, Costco, but so does, Walmart and Amazon and Dell and Apple and Best Buy. Most major retailers offer a business credit card, but, your listeners have to be careful because for example, Capital One Spark Card's one of the most common credit cards for businesses. But the problem is that reports to the consumer reporting agencies. Right. So even though it's a business credit card and has your business name, it reports to your consumer credit. And the problem there isn't just liability. It's that consumer credit's not designed to be used for a business. So if you put more than a $3,000 balance on that business credit card, then your personal credit scores can severely be damaged. And that's the problem with these accounts reporting on the consumer credit report. So even though Costco and Sam's Club offer business credit cards, you have to be careful that they're really giving you the credit based on established business credit you have. Because if that's not the case and you supply the social, as almost everyone does, then you'll often find that business account will still report to the consumer reporting agencies, and you're definitely liable the minute you provide that social security number.
So EIN number, where does one get an EIN number?
Well, you can go right to irs.gov. So once, the steps of setting up a business is, first you think of a business name. And once you do that, then you go to your Secretary of State to see if that name's available. And if it is, then you get set up, whether it be a corporation, LLC, whatever entity you choose. Now, LLCs and corporations are the best way to reduce your liability, whereas a sole proprietorship or partnership, you are the business, so you're always going to have that liability. But once you choose an entity, then the next step is you go right to irs.gov. You can even do a Google search for how to get an EIN, but you got to be careful. You only want to go to irs.gov to do this, and you can set up your EIN number for absolutely free. And then the minute you have that EIN number, you can start building a credit profile and score for that EIN.
And so, just to get to the basics of, because if someone's sitting out there going, "Well, I'm just sitting here writing my blog, and I'm just doing coaching services, or I'm just doing online courses. Why do I need to go through all of this stuff? Why can't I just do a regular business out of my home, just as a sole proprietor tied to my social security number? Why would I need to establish this credit?"
Well, to each his own, right? I mean, there's going to be some people that this might not be a fit for them, but the reality is you have to look at what you plan on doing for that business. And if you want to have a lifestyle business where, you're just working to make enough money to be able to spend time with your family, I'm all about that. Obviously, you've heard my story. But if you're really trying to really grow a business to be successful, you have to have business credit. It's not even an option because, every successful business in this country that's really successful has it. It's a rite of passage. Anybody can see your business credit profile and score. Your prospects, your clients, your competitors, lenders are pulling this. Credit issuers are pulling this. You can't get a conventional bank loan for your business without having established business credit. You can't get a real business credit cards that separate that liability without it. So it takes capital to grow a business. We all know that. And at some point in your growth, you're going to need access to that capital. And I kind of look at it the same as consumer credit. You don't need to have credit in the consumer world. I mean, you can live a life without credit cards and car loans and mortgages, or you could pay out of pocket and save the money for a car, or save the money for a mortgage. You can do those things. But most people at some point reach a stage in their life where it becomes a lot easier not have to pay cash for the home to be able to get the mortgage, or the same with a car loan, to be able to have that credit card available where you can earn points on what you spend and pay it off quickly and not even accumulate the debt. And it's no different in the business world. In the business world, it's the exact same. At some point, your business is going to grow where you're going to need access to that business credit to obtain larger amount of loans or to obtain real business credit cards. And that's when it really becomes important. But for me personally, it doesn't matter how big or small your business is. To me, if you have a choice of putting it in your business name or personally being liable for everything that happens in your business, then for your family's sake, why would you ever want for your family to take the hit and be liable for what happens in your business if you don't have to? That's just me though, right? I mean, I lost it all. I had it all. I lost it all. So I saw the impact, and that scarred me for the rest of my life. And I was frustrated, did not know there was a solution. So I believe now that it's important for people to know this exists, know you can have it, and then you have to decide whether or not it works for you or not. For me personally, I just will not take on that liability knowing there's another choice.
Exactly. And it's no different from our kids and our parenting. It sounds like what you're saying. What I hear you saying is this is planning for the future. So if you're just living day to day and you're just looking at, okay, I'm in my little business and I'm in my little consulting or I'm in my little whatever, and that's all I know right now. And I'm not necessarily, I've got these great dreams and I'd love to have this, that, and the other. But that's later. I'll deal with that later. Right now, I'm just doing this. It's really just like in your parenting, you can just live at 7 and 5 and not think about middle school and high school and college and all those things and not prepare for it. But that might put you at more risk, and definitely if you haven't planned for some of those things, when they hit you, they're going to really hit you and you're going to be totally unprepared and not know how to handle them. So it sounds like that's what you're saying, is that if you plan for the future, if you want to grow beyond just you sitting in your house, which is no big deal, like you said, if that's all you want and that's where you want to be, awesome, do it. But if you want to go further from that, and I got to tell you, Power Parents, when your kids leave you and you want to be here and just, be here for your kids, that's awesome. But I'm here to tell you, one of these days, they're going to move out. And then where are you going to be? You're still going to be in your little thing, and you have not planned for all this free time that you used to be dedicated to kids, which now is dedicated to what? And what identity do you have now? So it's just planning ahead, it sounds like what you're saying.
I think so, in large part. I mean, I've always said that success happens when preparation meets opportunity. And I think, if you want what you want in life and to be successful, then I think life is going to put the opportunities in your path. And whether or not you're prepared to take those opportunities or not really is the one thing you can control. And I've got friends that are bloggers, and I have friends that are bloggers that make seven figures a year. They never meant to do that.
Mhm.
They just liked the freedom of blogging, but their blog was awesome and it took off. And before they knew it, all these affiliate offers and the whole thing exploded, and they meant to do something on the side so they could travel. And now, she's running a seven-figure business, completely unintentional. And I've got other friends that started a mastermind just so they had the freedom, and they're running seven-figure businesses or even eight-figure businesses, as it explodes. So I think that that's kind of the way life is you don't know. I mean, you've got to be willing to take advantage of those opportunities for your sake, for your family's sake. But again, I could still relate to the people that just don't want to work and just have a business to make enough money to support their lifestyle. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want anything more than that, and you think there might even be a chance that those things might be something that you look for in the future, then you're right. It's you want to plan ahead. You want to plan ahead. You want to be ahead of the curve. You want to try to be prepared when those opportunities present themselves, so you have an opportunity to jump on them.
It sounds like that's kind of the type of person you are, and that's probably why this business fits you so perfectly. Because you've talked about not really even thinking about wanting to have a family or getting married or settling down or whatever words you want to use to describe that lifestyle. You didn't even want to think about that until you were set for that, and you had had a little fun and had the sales job and traveled and had a lot of just experienced different things. And then when you were actually ready, you picked a state and moved there. Okay, that's not normal.
I, I'm with you. I'm really blessed. I tell my wife this all the time. I mean, I thought at a younger age that I kind of had to make the decision between being in business and having a business and having a family. And my wife has shown me that I didn't have to, and I'm very blessed because I honestly went a long phase of my life where I didn't think I could have both. So to be in a place now where I have both, and this amazing wife and these amazing kids, and I get to come and do what I love every day, and then go home and do what I love, at home with my family. It's such a real blessing. But I just love being an entrepreneur. I just love it. And yesterday was one of those days where it was just a great day, and I'm just in here by myself, just dancing by myself in my office. It just because it was just a really good feeling, and I just love accomplishing things, and I love growth. I love personal growth, and I love businesses for that reason because I kind of think that's what we're all meant here to do is just advance and get better. And we take these great things from our parents that we learn from, and then we become parents, and then we pass those things on to our kids and all the other lessons that we learned from the things our parents didn't do or didn't have. And we pass those things on. And I just think it's all about advancing in life and being better. And having the opportunity to run a business is so cool because you just get to improve it and you get to make it better. And then you create a family here, and we have your own cool little culture that you create that people love. And it's just a really exhilarating, exciting experience being a parent entrepreneur. You really get the best of both worlds. It's just such a phenomenal blessing that we have.
Oh, hallelujah, boy, preaching to the choir here. But so tell me what. You have it all. At first, you didn't think you could have both. What's the one thing that has allowed you to actually have both? What did you have to put in place, or what is the one thing in your life that has allowed you to be able to have both?
Boundaries and my wife. I mean, my wife was there. When I was in the mortgage industry, I didn't realize the stress that put on me and on us. And I answered the phone at 11 o'clock at night, and Saturday and
Yeah.
Sunday, there were no barriers at all. It was just, I love to work, and she didn't make me have boundaries. And I just worked all the time. It was just, it never stopped. And then I grew up and I realized that, goals are very important. They're essential, but boundaries are just as important and essential. You need to determine what you want and where you're going, but you also have to determine what you're willing to sacrifice to get there. And that's still something I still struggle with because I've set those boundaries, and now I try. Should I nudge those boundaries? I don't know, but I love the boundaries that I have. I've set boundaries where I spend a lot of time with my kids, and I get my work done as well. And that's important So I think a lot of people understand goals. We hear the importance of goals, but we just aren't taught the importance of boundaries. And I think you have to set the boundaries of what you're willing to sacrifice to get to your goals. And that includes time at home and time with your family and hours of that you're working and hours you're not. And when you have your phone in front of you and when you don't, and when you're in the moment with your family and when you're distracted with other things contained with, taken up by work. So I think boundaries is really the most important, but I've been very blessed to have a wife that's allowed me this opportunity to take this journey of being an entrepreneur.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Ty. Having those boundaries will serve you very well when your children come into those wonderful teenage years, because that's the reason I love talking to you guys, to amazing parents in business, because they're exactly the same. Our parenting needs boundaries. Your kids, you're not going to just let your kid play in the middle of the street anytime they want. There are going to be boundaries, and you will have to set them. And many times, I'll tell you right now, very recently with my 17-year-old, I have been slapped in the face with some of the boundaries that I was given as a teenager. And I've had to say, why is that boundary there? What is the purpose behind it other than just having it there? And you will have to answer those questions as your kids come up and as your business grows. You have these boundaries, but they must be fluid and they must be applicable to the person standing in front of you and the time in life that you are right now, because they will change. But you're totally, absolutely 100% right. If you don't have any boundaries to start with, life is not going to be very much fun.
No, it's not, especially when you are a parent entrepreneur. You have to, because if you don't set, especially on the work side, the boundaries, then you'll just always be working. And I noticed that even today. Even last night, I was there checking my email, and my daughter grabbed my phone and put it down, and she said, "Please put your phone down." And that's emotional to me.
Yeah,
I have my
yeah,
5-year-old saying, "Look, this is my time.
yeah.
Please get out of that." And I was done with that phone the rest of the night.
Yeah.
So even she helps me set those boundaries sometimes when I forget. But I just think that it's just so important to have boundaries of what you're willing to sacrifice to get what you want. It really is. And you can
Yeah.
still get all the things you want with those
Yeah.
boundaries in place. You'll find a way to get it done. But it's the best way to do it when you really want the best of both worlds, to be able to be a parent and entrepreneur at the same time.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Now, if there's somebody sitting out there in the audience and they're just kind of rocking back and forth on the fence, and they've heard our conversation and they've looked at their life and said, okay, in my life, where has my story taken me? And I've really, really thought of this great idea to start this business, but oh man, I'm just not quite sure. And they're just rocking back and forth, wanting to jump into this amazing world that you and I inhabit. Amazing, scary, sometimes exhilarating, sometimes absolutely terrifying world. And what would you say to that person who's still rocking back and forth and not quite sure? What advice would you give them?
Don't do it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
I think I'm still amazed and shocked at how many people have no idea where they're going in life and expect good things to just happen. It's astonishing to me. I mean, that you have to first determine what it is you really want. And the minute you figure that out, then you don't even have a choice. Your subconscious will all of a sudden start solving the problems and paving the path for you to get there. But it all starts with you really, really knowing what you want. What is it you really want to do? Who is it you really want to be? What are you really passionate about? Because when you own a business, you have to be passionate about what you do, because it sucks and takes so much out of you that you have to be willing and want that to be taken out of you. You have to be hungry for that, and you have to be in love with the idea of that. And I think that only happens if you're truly passionate. And I think the passion only only really happens if you really know what you want. So that's my advice, is just stop and figure out first what it is you really want. Where do you want to be in a year, in 5 years? What's important to you? And then once you know that, then you set the second parameter of what are you willing to sacrifice to get there? What is it? Do you want to work 12 hours a day or 8 or 15, or what are your boundaries? And once you know where you're going and the boundaries of what you're willing to sacrifice to get there, then I think as long as you keep focused on what you want, then the opportunities will present themselves. You just have to be wise enough to see them as opportunities and jump on them as they come up.
Fantastic. That is that Power Parents. If that isn't the best advice you've heard so far, I don't know what is. And Ty, we call ourselves Power Parents because just like we've talked about today, if we've raised kids to any age, at least a year old, and especially past potty training, if you've done that, business is nothing. You got business. You can handle business if you've raised a child and handled all the things that you've had to do up through, getting them to go to school even. And so that's why we talk about the fact that we already have the power as a parent. Someone raising a child, we already have the power within us to build an incredible business. We just have to tap that power and find the right tools. And like you said, create the boundaries that work for our lives and just hit the ground running and just do it. Use that power and do it, because it is an amazing ride, isn't it?
It is. And the funny thing is the correlation between the two are so close. I mean, really, starting and running a business isn't that much different than raising kids if you really think about it.
Right. That's it. Well, Ty, thank you so much for joining me. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I'm going to, next time someone asks me advice about starting a business, I'm going to go, don't do it. I'm going to remember that one for a long time. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. And, tell everybody where we can find you.
To learn more about us, what we do, make sure you visit our website. It's creditsuite.com. That's creditsuite, SUITE.com, /EIN. And that'll give you a great free guide on the exact steps to be able to build business credit, to separate that personal and business liability.
Fantastic. I hope you have an amazing day, and I can't wait to chat with you again sometime really soon. I'd love to have you back on, and we can go through some really specific tools if you'd like, because I think this is vital for entrepreneurs to know.
Yeah, well, listen, I had a ton of fun, and I would love to come back on with you. So I just really appreciate you spending the time with me today.
Okay, Power Parents, I hope Ty gave you a lot of great insights into business credit and, some of the things that made him pendulum swing or decide to do differently, not only in his parenting, but also in his business from his upbringing. So that's kind of what I would ask you. Number one, what pendulum swing did you take when you started your family based on the family you came from? And or your business based on how your parents worked. I mean, I always find that fascinating how we choose to get rid of what we thought was negative rather than emulate what we think was positive. Most of us do anyway. So that's my first question. What pendulum swing did you take when you started your family and or your business? And number two, are you building your business credit with your EIN number? And Ty gave you a great tip and a great download that you can take advantage of. creditsuite.com /EIN. So I'm definitely going to go take advantage of that, and I sincerely hope that you do too. But in the meantime, enjoy the journey. To get powered up for your day, just go to parententrepreneur.power.com and listen to any one of the over 100 episodes we've had so far with amazing entrepreneurs just like you. It might just help you feel like a grown-up again.